will become awkward. So yes, I'm Greg. I'm interviewing David about his book Dance Prone, which I just read. Thought it was great. So it's a chance for us to have a catch up as well. I'm a musician, a drummer, honorary musician, and I've known Dave for probably 20 years on and off, but I haven't been living in Wellington for a long time, so it's a chance to catch up.
Yeah. My name's David, and I am a writer and kind of a former musician, kind of. And I wrote Dance Prone, and we're going to have a yarn about it. Yeah.
So I think, I can't remember when it was, but you were visiting in Dunedin, and I'd read The Invisible Mile, and I really liked that.
Yeah.
And I asked the obvious question, what are you doing next? And you talked about, you had some ideas about a book about set in that American hardcore scene that obviously we were both fed from. And it was kind of like, what made you sort of go to that place? Or what, because it wasn't the only idea, and you weren't sure if it was going to be in America or the UK or,
Right.
It was obviously just at that early sort of stage. I don't know how much research you'd done, but...
So, no, what happened was in 2015, I was kind of looking for ideas for new books, and I had written some stuff for new material for certain projects, but I hadn't really settled on anything. And I was at work and I was bumming around, and I came across a review by Robert Christgau of 3 books that dealt with Husker Du. And, Husker Du were like one of my favourite bands when I was they still are.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. I got to see Grant Hart 5 years ago before he died. So it's sort of just almost one of the greatest nights in the last 5 years. It was really cool. Yeah,
same. I got to see this. I saw the same tour. It was pretty amazing. I wanted to go and talk to him, but it's just like I can't. Yeah. It
was in Port, so it was possible to actually talk to him because it was small enough. Yeah.
Did you talk to him?
Yeah, it was cool.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, bought a record off him.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, but this is Robert Christgau thing. Oh, I guess it was more about Bob Mould. It was about a book about Husker Du. It was Bob Mould's autobiography and another one. Name slipped out of my head at the moment. Anyway, Robert Christgau was kind of lamenting the fact that none of the writers, including Bob Mould himself, were able to capture what it was like to see Husker Du live.
Yeah, right.
And I was feeling a little bit confident at the time because the Invisible Mile had just come out and was doing really well. And I was like, I'll do it.
It's a good challenge.
Yeah, I'll do it. And so I tried. Yeah. 4.5 years later, it took me forever to write it. And it was so hard to write. But it was, it was a trigger from stuff that from my past, drawing me to now. And also another thing was, I kind of wanted to write a book with a subject matter my friends would be interested in reading, because with The Invisible Mile, it was quite funny. I wrote this book, and all my friends were like, it's about cycling.
It's about sports.
What's David? And there's a funny story about that. But it was kind of this. It really triggered this thing that I wanted to write about something my friends would pick up and go, "Oh yeah, I'd want to read that."
Yeah. Well, I think it's the hardest thing I think is to try and write from inside what it feels like to be on a stage. I do think you have managed to. I know it's really different from behind a drum kit.
Yeah.
But I do. It's kind of funny when I was reading those parts where you're talking about, particular character being on the top of a set of amps and the riff being not there, but everyone knowing it's coming and all that sort of sense and the explosion. It was kind of like, I did get a sense of this is what it's like for Dave. Or this is what it was like for Dave in that moment, potentially, which is, And I guess it's going to be different for everyone. So was there a because before when I got to Wellington, that whole fast, hard, dirty scene had gone. But were you in that kind of? Were you playing that kind of music here?
So.
Because that's back in the Paddy and Frank days. And
well,
stuff,
I played with Paddy.
Oh right, okay, yeah.
I played with Paddy Moran.
Yeah.
He was the drummer. We met in 1989.
Oh, okay.
He was a complete bogan, and it was really funny. And we kind of learned to play music together.
Okay.
The two of us. Like, I couldn't play the guitar and he couldn't play the drums, but we kind of learned to play live.
Right,
if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
We were absolutely appalling for the first few years.
Oh, hopefully.
Yeah. You'd expect so, eh? But then we had a band called Clay who were okay.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was sort of 92 to 95, I think.
Right.
And we toured quite a bit and
cool.
country and stuff.
Because I remember coming to Wellington because I was in Spheric Experiment with Joffa Leary.
Yeah.
I remember coming to Wellington and there was a practice room down the railway yards which was, so that was that same time. I mean, that's when I met Paddy.
Yeah.
And Frank, and so when they later moved to Dunedin, I ended up playing with them.
Of course.
Down there, but, they moved off. It was like a great thing to be the drummer in a band with two drummers who weren't playing the drums anymore.
Yeah.
But still had that sense of rhythm. That was my ideal. It was like, this is what I want in a band.
Yeah.
I want to be the drummer in a band of drummers, but they all have to play keyboards and sing.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Because I came down to Dunedin and played with them. Do you remember Pixies Night?
No.
Oh, damn. Because, I played with them.
I was trying to think what the bands would have been. What was it? Was it Truck Stop or something? What was?
Well, Truck Stop was their band in Wellington.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Clay, it was a sort of a version of Clay, what you did?
In Dunedin?
Yeah.
Oh, no, it was a Pixies covers
band.
Okay. No, so I was just wondering if you were there at that gig in Dunedin.
I don't remember it.
Because it was kind of like a who's of Dunedin musicians were there. It was a really fun night. But I was in Clay with Paddy and Charles, and then we had a couple of disastrous gigs, and we were kind of tired of not getting anywhere, so we broke up. And then that was.
Well, so that was that kind of fast.
I'd call it hard. I'd call it post-hardcore.
Yeah, right.
Paddy, we were kind of had slow and fast.
Sure.
I never played hardcore. Hardcore was done by the time I started playing.
Yeah.
Even though I loved it.
Yeah.
Still do. Playing it would have been wrong.
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out why bands would play it.
Yeah. Well, it was nice because there was always, we all had, when we wanted to play slow, we could just refer back to Flipper.
Yeah.
And that was fine.
Yeah, that's right.
You could do that. Because that was, that was their genius, really. It was as heavy as any good hardcore band, but it was slow.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Cool. Yeah. There is no getting there, really.
No.
Thank you. You do things like, there's things that I've done that from the outside might look like you've got there, but there isn't anything here. It's once I realised it's basically like kicking a soccer ball around with your mates, and no one's ever going to get paid.
That's right.
And maybe no one will even watch. Then it starts to become fun again.
Well, it's interesting. I've kind of made the decision. It's just about the work. It's just about doing the work and having fun. If you get to have fun, that's great. But it's just about creating something, and it's not about what happens when we're talking about a book. What happens after the book's published? It's no longer yours. You just ignore everything after that. Get on with the work for the next.
Yeah. No,
that's how I feel.
It's amazing to know someone that's actually done that much work. That's great. Because most of us never actually get anything over the line. So you've done that, which is cool.
Well, it's bloody hard work.
And it's your second one too. There's obviously other little ones along the way, but
Yeah. It's it's a strange thing.
Yeah.
Writing a book. It's a really strange thing. But,
punks and stuff were playing this really heavy, fast music. Was great.
Yeah.
So I was sort of the honorary student amongst those, and I was able to drag like the King Loser guys and the Spirits into that space, and because it was a practice room, but but this it was kind of funny trying to play hardcore, like Husker do-ish sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You hear your heart going. That would be a reason to come back to Wellington, would be play with Campbell and Andrew again. And
that'd be amazing.
Because he's writing great songs, and it's weird that Bob Mould put out an album, like a new album, and keep hearing little bits of it, and it's quite cool.
Yeah. No, apparently it's very good. I haven't actually listened to it yet.
Yeah, they play a little bit. I listened to WFMU, and they play a little bit, and it's kind of it's good. It's good. In a strange way, there are kind of echoes of dance prone in it, and that's about endurance, and it's about abuse of substances, and it's about sort of the psychological sort of breakdown that happens around that sort of stuff, around exhaustion, but it's quite a different book. It feels like it's less complicated than Dance Prone. Did it feel like that when you wrote it?
Yeah,
right.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. The Invisible Mile, in some ways, was incredibly easy to write because, it started in Paris and finished in Paris. Well, theoretically, it didn't quite work out for the writer, but...
Yeah.
And when I sat down to write it, it just flowed. The cycling stuff, I used to ride a bike when I was a kid. I know nothing about endurance cycling or anything. I just sat down to write it, and it just flowed.
Wow.
It was amazing. It was so easy to write.
Yeah.
And it just had this voice, and I was like, I had no idea what this was going to be like.
Yeah.
And sorry. And and I had the complete opposite experience with Dance Prone.
Right.
I sat down to write it. I know music. I play music. There was nothing there.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating to me that the stuff I know really well was completely absent.
Yeah.
And I kind of went, and this ends up being in the book. A lot of this, my experience of trying to write the book, actually ends up in the book.
Right.
I realised I didn't really remember playing music on stage.
Right.
I don't really, and I still don't recall playing on stage and singing.
Right.
And then I asked around some of my friends, do you remember? And they're like, no.
Yeah, right.
No.
Right.
And specifically people who were, screaming their heads off and playing the guitar.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I remember the gigs, I remember the audience, and I remember the stage and the venues, but I don't remember being on the act of playing live. And so I came up with this theory that when you're kind of playing this kind of music, kind of playing, hardcore. Well, it's not that I played hardcore, but music that replicates that kind of physical effort. You're kind of putting yourself into a state of trauma. Because everything's screaming. Your whole body is screaming and it's fighting, and it's kind of like this, enforced PTSD kind of effect. Afterwards you can't remember because your body is trying to protect itself, and the brain's trying to protect itself and doing all these other things. Remembering isn't part of the deal. So that kind
that's funny. That's really funny. Because I wasn't sure whether to talk about the sort of, because the trauma runs through that book, like all the way through it, and in a strange way, I think. But it's nice because you incorporate someone's art practice, or different people's art practice in it. There's also this sort of the flip side of the trauma, which is kind of like almost like an ecstatic thing, which is in a strange way if I was going through that process that you were just thinking then, I'd be thinking, why don't I remember? It's because I'm almost in an it sounds like such happy bullshit, but almost like a slightly ecstatic place, because I've switched off that part of my brain.
Yeah.
I've switched off all the voices, and eventually, once you get past that, why the fuck did you hit that cymbal, or that's really stupid, or this song is really dumb. Once you start turning off those voices, and the self-doubt that you have when you're playing live and stuff, then it just becomes,
But I
but
I
I wouldn't have thought of it as a trauma thing, which is really interesting. But I'm not at the front.
Yeah.
And when I have been up the front, it's been, I've been shit scared. It's been terrifying. And so, and I do that pretentious thing where I turn around and I don't face anyone.
Yeah.
I have to do it,
Yeah.
So, I'm quite happy to be safe behind my kit, because probably I am safe from some of that onslaught. Well, but I do, that's an interesting memory thing.
Yeah, I mean, I remember playing in bands with, like with Honeymoon, the band with Sarah.
Fantastic band.
Oh, thanks. And I remember playing that stuff, because all I was doing was playing really gently and stuff, just, faux soft rock.
Well, I said to Sarah yesterday, I've actually got a really good recording from my old Zoom of a gig. And I don't know if you guys have heard it.
I think I've got it.
Oh, good. And she said, the sound quality's probably not very good. And I said, well, the songs are great, though.
The sound quality was good.
Yeah. It's good you've got it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've got it. Yeah, so, but I think the thing, there is definitely a, jump somewhere. For me, and the reason why I wrote it was about memory.
Yeah, right.
And it was a book about the memorization of World War One. That was what was on my mind, and that's what I was writing towards, because everyone has different answers. And memory and trauma, and this kind of thing. And now that I've finished Dance Prone, and now that it's settled in my mind, I very much think of Dance Prone as being just part two of the Invisible Mile, because it's about memory, it's about trauma, it's about they've all these things in common. I just look things up, if I'm in a city and I'm like, actually I need something which is actually real in this city instead of making this bit up. I'll just go on Wikipedia. And I do spend a lot of time looking at maps.
Right.
I've always been obsessed with maps since I was a kid.
Right.
I love maps. Google Earth and Street View stuff. This thing. That's
that's good. That's good.
Yeah. And it was the same with the Invisible Mile.
Yeah. Right.
I just spent I spent on Street View, just crawling forward down French lanes and up mountain sites.
Yeah, right,
to know what it all looked like.
Right.
All the roads, they're not the same roads, but they're the same area. So I could look around and see what the mountains look like that they were cycling through.
And if it's cobblestone, it probably still was. And
if it's snow,
of course.
It's an incredible tool. Only way I knew about music when I was a kid was through having these conversations about music with people. I mean, without the internet, and I didn't really read music magazines. I just couldn't be bothered. It was really just having these conversations with people. That's how I heard names of bands. That's how I stored up knowledge about stuff, and it was a very long, slow process. I'm still hearing things now that I'm surprised I never heard 30 years ago, 30-something years ago.
So you weren't one of those guys. I mean, I was lucky enough to have a flatmate. I remember in a period
flatmates
who loved SS2, and it was like anything that was coming out on that. So there'd be the
No, I was never one of those guys.
There'd be the Minutemen, then the Meat Puppets, and then there might be a Butthole Surfers record, and then so every week there'd be a new album that we would all get really excited about.
Yeah.
because they were following, and it was about some of those little labels, like finding a way into that music.
Well, that's how I'd. It was friends. Come around. We'd sit around, drink, and talk about music. And they say, "Okay, this album's coming out soon. We've got to listen to this." Or that somebody or a mate would turn up with a record and put it on and say, "Did you know about this? This is and that's how we found out about it.
So
it was amazing.
What specifically? What records would have been?
I remember
key.
Yeah. Okay. So I remember a few things that happened. Like, this is spread out over, like, say, 4 years. My eldest sister, who was 11 years older than me, she had records. Most of them were kind of crappy 70s, Pink Floyd and shit like that.
Yeah.
But she also had a record by this band called the Velvet Underground. Ta-da! The cliched thing, And I mean, that's a strange looking cover.
Yeah.
And it was like this compilation of VU stuff. It was really weird. Anyway, I put that on and went, oh, that's interesting.
Right.
That's that was sort of mind changing. But I was still slow to sort of move towards punk rock.
Right.
I don't know why. I don't have a good reason for it.
There wasn't a lot around.
There wasn't a lot around, and I thought they looked a bit silly. So I never really listened to the music.
Yeah.
But there was this Velvet Underground business, which was just blowing my mind. And I was listening to a lot of Neil Young and Bob Dylan. That's probably what I listened to up until
Would she have had Patti Smith?
No.
At the same time?
And then I had another sister who had Patti Smith.
Right.
And I remember she and her boyfriend had a lot of records, and they were sort of like going through stuff slowly. And then they went to university in Christchurch. He was a couple of years older than me. And I was 15, and I went down there, and they had Patti Smith.
Yeah.
And they played that to me, and I was like, they was tied into this, tonally tied into this VU stuff.
Yeah.
And so that was cool. And then the next year I went down there, and they had Zen Arcade by Husker Du, which is, there's Zen Arcade and there's New Day Rising.
Right.
They're my two Husker Du albums that I just love.
Okay.
And
Land Speed Record.
Oh, and Land Speed Record. God, yeah, of course. And Metal Circus. Metal Circus. As well.
Sorry, I shouldn't.
Land Speed Record, which is the greatest album name for a hardcore band in the history of hardcore. Yeah. And so that was like, oh my God, okay. And suddenly I'm kind of like, maybe there is something about this punk rock thing that I need to get into.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So and then that was when I started going out and seeing bands.
Right.
And then I remember one specific day, I think it was my birthday, and I think I was turning 18. A Sonic Youth record turned up at our house.
Oh, yeah.
And it was Evil.
Oh, yeah.
And when we're talking about Tombra, right?
Oh, yeah.
That the first time you hear it, that first initial thing, and you know something suddenly, because you're hearing something. The first notes of Sonic Youth Evo is the song Tom Violence.
Oh yeah.
And the instant I heard the first chord, my life changed completely. Wow. Everything else was gone.
Right.
That had a whiff of happiness about it.
Did that record come from your Christchurch sister?
Yes.
Oh, right. Oh,
yes.
Cool.
Yes.
Handy.
Yeah. And I think from her boyfriend, actually.
Yeah.
But Sonic Youth just changed my world. I was like, this is how music should sound. This is what it should be.
Right.
Forget normal harmonic systems. You don't need them.
Yeah.
You can make songs out of any tonal arrangement you like.
Yeah.
And I still remember that moment. Just blew my mind. So Sonic Youth, and they're still a big band for me.
Right.
I stopped listening to them sort of around sort of gooish kind of. Not much happened for me after that. I know what happened for other people, but for me, all their 80s stuff up, and Goo's got some good stuff on it, but up to then it was.
I hear good things about Kim Gordon's still doing interesting things as well.
She is.
Great,
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
She's a very, very smart woman. she's making some good music, I think.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, very artistically inclined. Kind of her attitude towards it is sort of, from an artistic rather than sort of a musical approach, which is really cool. But yeah, then I was just surrounded by all these great New Zealand bands. Some of whom you were in. I'm not sure if I ever saw you when you were in the Verlaines.
Played Wellington a couple of times.
When were you in them?
I was trying to think. It's probably about 91 or something or other.
Okay. Were you in there when Mike stood there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But I was only in that band for 2 years. But it was the one thing it did do was it gave me that experience that's in dance prone, which is that travelling. Playing. I think this guy Bob Lawton had organised this tour, and we played 24 shows in 27 days or something insane.
Sure.
And he was renowned for basically making people drive 10 hours to play to 15 people just so that you could pay for the gas. And it was like you'd drive, we'd drive past somewhere like Philadelphia like twice before we even played there. It was like, why don't we just stay here? We were so exhausted. And it was about that. I mean, the endurance thing. I mean, I got Giardia and I was vegan. So there was nothing to eat. There was Wendy's salad bar was a great discovery. It was like, wow, I can eat something. But I lost a stone by the time we got to San Francisco near the end. I was just like, that was the end of me really with the band. I just went, I can't. I mean, the internal politics in the band just killed us. But you just sort of realise how hard it is. Yeah. We did play with Fire Hose, though. It was kind of interesting, and it was nice meeting Mike Watt because I was a fan like you of those guys, and went out, and because I was the vegetarian in the band, I went and had a falafel with him, and it was like heroes. You meet them, and it was really nice. But it was really funny because he talked about the thing that I remember most clearly was like that they pretty much become incapable of living a normal life. He talked about how they'd been on tour for like a year and a half, and they got back to their places in LA, and they were basically at home having thought, we really want to finish this tour, and they were home for a week, and they rang up their manager and said, we can't do this anymore, put us back on the road. And they'd been on the road for 2 years, and they were kind of like zombies. And it was sort of like, oh. And I think, obviously they've surfaced and started doing other things which are good, and I mean, they were an interesting band, but it was also almost like some kind of bad stadium rock show that they were putting on as well, which was quite weird,
Really? That was Fire Hose.
Yeah. Well, compared to us, our little weirdness, but yeah, it did remind me of that. And we were staring down the barrel of basically spending the next 3 years touring America, and I was just like, with $10 a day maybe for per diems, and couldn't pay for our phone bills back to New Zealand to our partners, and I was
that's enough of that.
It was just like too hard. Can't help, and that's But I think if you live in America, you can do what the people in your book do, and because you can always just drop in and out and stuff.
That's right. That's right.
But those tour vans, we were all in one.
Yeah, I did something similar in Europe,
and
I did something in Europe when I was a sound engineer.
Oh yeah.
I remember we were in Poland and we did. I don't know what it was, 16 gigs in 17 days or something. And the person who organised it we were just constantly crisscrossing the entire length of Poland.
Yeah. And you are putting on that really dirty shirt each day.
It's disgusting.
And you're eating the worst food, and you never quite get a decent sleep anywhere.
No, never.
You
just shattered.
You become really blunt, and then you've got to somehow turn it on. And you do.
Yeah.
As soon as the gig starts,
something
somehow it's there, but the rest of the day you're just like
zombies,
wrecked.
Yeah. And, I'm really glad I didn't have to have that life.
So there's a lot of America in there. How did you do that? Did you spend time over there? Like it feels like the size of the building, and the street, and is that like Google Maps, or how did you do your research?
I did spend 2 months driving around the States and 2005.
Oh, okay.
But
Because it does feel like kind of the sense of what New Mexico looks like, or what.
Yeah, no, well, that's just being a writer.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
which is different from being a musician.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to have these chops about you. You need to be able to create these things.
Yeah.
But Google Earth street maps. Yeah, totally, without a doubt.
But that's what crossed my mind. I was thinking,
How can you know which way the wind's blowing in that street? And you go, either you're making it up or you've actually done some good research. I mean, it feels like a really heavily researched. Is that a big part of your writing? Or?
No. Well, it's a funny thing, research. I write and then I go, and then I look something up.
Right.
But I don't delve deep. No.
Oh, right. Okay.
Partly because I'm not well enough to read lots of stuff.
Right.
Because I just can't read. I've read like 2 books in the last 2 years, which just drives me crazy. I have ME, CFS, chronic fatigue syndrome, whatever you want to call it. And that's why this book was so hard to write, because I couldn't think most of the time, just couldn't think. The whole thing was a battle trying to remember what was on the page, what was on the previous page. It was hell.
Mm.
And I didn't think about it until my cousin, who also has the same disease, she read it and she said, this book is about the pain that you're going through writing it. I just feel it all the way through. It's actually where all the pain and trauma comes from. It's this horrible thing I was battling trying to write the bloody thing. So
it's funny, I don't get that from the writing, but I can hear
won't.
it. I can, from you, I can hear it. But what I would often like, it was a much harder book to read.
Yeah, I know.
And it was because it was like, where's the sentence gone? It's like it's this and it's that, and then it's like, and I read it again and I go, what's that? But in An Invisible Mile, it was kind of like I knew that there was a little bit of that, but it felt like it was because of the drugs and the experiences that someone was taking. So there was a certain sort of gonzo derangement about it, which I thought was. But in this, it was like, I'm just not smart enough to understand what Dave's talking about here, because I'd lost it. But over time, it's kind of like all of those different angles in each one of those paragraphs start to come clear later on. They should. And it's like it's like you put a hell of a lot more into that. Yeah. Because you are bringing in politics and music and art and cults and all kinds of stuff that make it a very complicated thing to try and wrangle into a story as well.
No, it is
But
complicated.
I didn't hear that. I didn't hear the pain.
The pain.
Of
no.
that, but I can sort of see why it would make you second guess everything, which is why everything's sort of got so many aspects to it, because
No, it was extremely painful to write.
Oh, well done.
Thanks. Like with The Invisible Mile, it was strange. So I started writing that in August. Let's say I started writing on August the 8th, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Had somebody come up to me and told me, you're going to write this book that does quite well on August the 7th, and it's set in the Tour de France, I would have said, you're absolutely mad.
Yeah.
I had no idea I was ever going to write that book.
Right.
Never, ever thought that I was going to write that. But then something happened, and it triggered it. But with this one, it was so logical that I was going to write this book about music.
Right.
It's just so ironic that it was so much harder to write than the other one.
Yeah.
But I'm happy with it.
Yeah. I guess it's like the second record.
Yeah.
You've got to think about it.
You have to think about it,
It's not just songs you wrote when you were 15. It's actually something you have to think about.
Yeah, that's right. But I don't know, the complexity of it, it's strange. I don't find it complex.
Yeah, right.
But I think that's because the way my mind works, I also have ADD, which means everything is complex to me.
Yeah, right,
Everything is overly complex,
Yeah.
and so I'm just trying to replicate the world as it occurs in my experience. So when somebody says a sentence is cryptic or is whatever, I'm really, really surprised, because I always think it's just the logic of the situation these people are in. But I think that's kind of my logic in these situations. So
Oh, it does mean you've got to kind of work hard to actually extract what's in there. So that's kind of that's interesting as well.
Yeah, I find a kind of peace when I write those sentences, when I get to the end of them, and to me they've made a sense to the structure of the novel and such forth. I feel a really kind of great peace in myself when that occurs, and sort of satisfaction. It's like finding the exact chord.
Right.
It might not make total sense, but tonally, it has a logic. So that's kind of one of the things that actually drives me to write is a tonal thing as much as a logic thing. That's what you hear first. Before you hear melody or harmony, you hear the timbre. Well,
and I think that's captured the way you describe the music. I think you did that. I think, when you're describing what it's like to be live and where the notes are and how it's all building, and it's the quality of the sound, and someone's falling over and someone's throwing something, and that it's about that you are describing that timbre sort of side of things, and it's quite cool. And I haven't really heard that before, but and music writing necessarily, but it's all about that.
Well, I was trying to do something I hadn't heard read before. I hadn't read before. Which was difficult. That's probably why nobody has tried to write it before.
Because it's the nature of their voices. It's like Bob Mould's voice or Dee Boone's voice or all those people. It's not what they're singing. It's the sound of their voice. The sound of their voice.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. No, exactly. Anybody can sing these notes, but it's the sound of somebody's throat that makes it something specific. Like, I can't stand music with singers who can sing effortlessly. I'm just not interested in it. It's like somebody playing the flute. I just don't get the point of it. But
tone, the character tone.
That's a mistake. Anyway.
Talking about timbre as that's where and I think it's him. Is that right? I feel like it was him that was talking about, and it's like that the meaning in a song is in the timbre, and it was that really that sort of set me back a little, like in a good way. It made me go, and it feels like my experience of music has been. There's the sort of willful kind of punk idea of not wanting to know anything, not wanting to know how to play, not ever wanting to get a lesson on how to play, not wanting to know what the name of my drum kit was or when it was felt like. It was like, the less I know, the more chance there is that I'm actually going to play something. And it was kind of, I don't know, it's like at heart a certain laziness, and it was an excuse to just not try and study or learn about any of this sort of stuff. But it feels to me like the reason that I love that hardcore world and the reason that I love music has got nothing to do with the music that you could put down on paper. It's got nothing to do with what a songwriter might have to do to create a structure to give that information to someone else. If that's the way because from where I'm sitting, it's the nature of the sound that you're making. That is where all the work is. That's where all of the fun is, and that's where all of the value is, and what Tony's saying. It's all the meaning. And it reminded me of a conversation with a guy that I was in a band with, who was got a PhD in music. He was a kind of like well-known musical kind of guy, and like he hated well, he didn't, I don't really hate it. He said like, just not interested at all in rap music. And this is a long, long time ago. And I was going, he said, there's no music in it, And so I played him some Public Enemy at his house one day, thinking I was gonna, blow his mind.
Yeah,
And he's going, it's just D. And I was like, that was when I realised how different my experience and my interest as well.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine said, "Oh, there's this book coming out by David Coventry called This Is Memorial Device."
Oh, okay.
His writer friend and his agent, he has the same agent.
Right.
This book, so I kind of was able to get an early copy of it.
Yeah.
And do you know about this book?
I know David a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Anyway, and I got it. I got the book, and I was like, "Holy shit! Somebody's actually done it.
Right.
They've actually written a good rock book.
Right.
Because they don't exist.
Right.
They're always a disaster. Even some of the greatest writers in history have tried writing about rock and missed.
Yeah. Right.
And here he is. He'd done it. He'd done it, and I was like,
Oh, okay.
I was kind of annoyed because it's like, well, I assume I'm just going to fail like everybody else.
Yeah.
But here he was succeeding. I was amazed. It was a brilliant book. Actually.
Oh, cool.
Brilliant.
Okay.
You should read it.
Yes,
It's really great.
yeah. And is it America as well?
No, this is set in Scotland. This is
Oh, right.
set in-
Oh, right. Oh,
So
yeah.
Airdrie.
Ah.
Airdrie, yeah.
Yeah, where I come from.
Oh, funny.
Yeah.
I knew David, somebody, so it's about the post-punk scene in Airdrie.
Right.
So I actually knew David at that time when he was a youngster.
Yeah.
And one or two, and we'd go and see every bands like the Snap-ons and stuff like that.
Yeah, right.
And there's a little bit where
We had the strap-ons in Dunedin.
yeah, the Snap-ons was a tool company, and it was like
Oh, of course, yeah.
pre Snap-on
Yeah,
bits
yeah,
to
yeah,
your
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that, and of course
The trucks are
Post-punks.
like-
Oh, that's a great name.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
he. And I lost touch with him when I went to university. I also knew him strangely enough because we used to go to Airdrie Astronomical.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Airdrie's an industrial town, as you know from the book. The book is
Yeah.
fantastic, by the way. I thought it's
It's
amazing.
amazing book.
But one of the few things is some philanthropists back in Victorian days decided the public library should have an astronomy.
All right.
And they built a telescope
Right.
and stuff like that. And David and I used to go there. It was one of the few kind of
Yeah.
one of the few kind of weird sanctuaries was going to see. And of course all the bands that were in the Airdrie that the book kind of talks about, they were dreadful.
Right.
But they had the intent and also had the anger
it,
and
right.
energy
Yeah.
That's it.
that made it
Yeah.
That's it.
good.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
it. That's
Yeah,
what
yeah.
it's all about. It's the
Yeah.
anger and the energy, and whether you know,
Ah, funny.
yeah.
It's good to catch up. Hopefully we'll do this properly some other time as well. Although this wasn't properly. But yeah, great book, and keep going.
Thank you. Cheers. Great to see you. And yeah, it's absolutely fun.
Yep.